Good evening, my beloved faithful, and welcome to the final show of this season of Living the Resurrection, broadcasted live here in Holy Resurrection Greek Orthodox Church in Brookville, New York. Welcome to another show. As is always the case, and all of you know by now, you are able to submit questions for this evening at ltrbrookville@gmail.com, and you will see that at the bottom of your screen. Tonight's topic I thought of speaking about, and for those who know me, you'll know very well, the life of Saint Paisios, the Athonite. He is one of our modern saints. He is actually one of a number of saints in the 20th century that our ecumenical patriarchate has acknowledged, has recognized, or as it's known in Greek, they did the official agiokatataxi, which is the official rendering of a person in the list of the saints. And actually, our ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew and the Synod there, the Holy and Sacred Synod, probably have canonized so many saints in the 20th century, and not only, but it's indicative that no matter how difficult times become, no matter whatever challenges the world is facing, God's grace continues to operate. God's grace continues to sanctify the lives of those who turn their own life towards Him, who make their life completely connected with His. And I know that many of you who are watching have heard various things about St. Paisios. Some of the stories and some of the messages that I'll try to convey this evening are things that I have heard from people who actually lived and saw and breathed with him. Lay people, as well as clergy, as well as hierarchs, and not only. And a lot of you already know much about his life. He died, I believe, in 1994 in the area of Thessaloniki. He was born in Pharasa, which is in Cappadocia, which is in Asia Minor. And within a very few days of his birth, he was uprooted as a refugee and made his way to Greece, where his family was raising him in a most beautiful way. And it's early on in the saint's life that we see such a profound influence, especially not only of his father, but also of his mother. In the life of the church, we see the role that mothers play. In the life of Saint Eleftherios, his mother, Anthi. In the life of Saint Panteleimon, my own patron saint, Evuli, also a saint. In the life of Saint John Chrysostom, his mother, also a saint. In the life of Saint Basil the Great, his mother and father, also saints. In fact, that's the family of families in terms of saints. I believe there's something like 5 or 6 members of that family who became saints. The role of the mother. And it was interesting that she kind of taught the saint through simple things, the virtues that one should have in their life. Many times today we talk about different things with our own kids, with our own families. But if we look into the life of Saint Paisios, we see that simple things, simple little disciplines has such an impact in forming the life of the saint. For example, the mother of Saint Paisios would not permit them to eat between meals. Now this seems kind of trivial, like if somebody's hungry, what's the big deal of letting them eat something? But it was a very clear thing that the idea of self-control is something that a person must have throughout their life. And if the roots of those seeds, if the seeds are planted now and the roots are grown of self-control, the impact it would have in the person's life moving forward. And so we see very early on that even though these people were refugees, even though these people had suffered tremendously being uprooted from their land, even though his father also was very strong-willed kind of person and tough, he was the mayor of their town and had to fight off many times enemies that were trying to hurt the community, they never deviated from their love for Christ. Now, many of the things in the stories I may bring up this evening, I want to say that we should never, as I've said in some of my sermons, the saints are here to inspire us. Therefore, as one of my professors used to say, inspiration, not imitation. And so I just want to say up front that many times it's a mistake for us who live in the times that we do, and in general, when we reflect on the lives of saints, to try to somehow interpret and understand the life and inner person of every saint. Because in the end of the day, Christ has made each and every one of us different. This is the uniqueness of all of us. It's not that only a certain group or a certain type of person by God's grace becomes a saint, and therefore all of us others are kept to the side. But even when you walk into a church, you'll notice you have the dome of the church, which is Christ, then the prophets, then the evangelists, and then when you come to the level of where the actual faithful sit in the pews, you have lined on the walls the saints. And that's a visual kind of connection that where we stood, they stood. The temptations we have, they had. In fact, some would say that the saints had multiple temptations beyond the temptations we had. And what is a temptation? It's anything that pulls us from staying united and in communion with God. So kind of the first thing that St. Paisios really taught us is when we take care of the simple little things in life, if we're careful with the simple little day-to-day struggles, this is an opportunity for God's grace to fill our lives. I've had the very big blessing of visiting Mount Athos, where the saint's hut, where he used to actually live and pray, and I would like for our technician to pull that up. Costa, if you can pull that image up. It's in monastic communities and in some churches in Greece, they have what they call stasidia. This image that you're seeing now on the screen is an image of the saint's home when he lived there. It's a small little hut. We should say this was referred to as Panaguda, little Panagia. It's a diminutive that's used in the region of Chalkidiki, Panagia. We say in modern Greek, Panagitsa. The Chalkidikiot say Panaguda. It's the little Panagia. This was the hut where the saint last resided before his death. He had been in Sinai. He had been in other parts of Mount Athos, but this is the last place he lived. And you can see him in the photo. He seems to be kind of leaning over and speaking to another monk there. And it's, to this day, a pilgrimage site. At the time when the saint was alive, not a single bus would arrive on Mount Athos in the capital, Carries, that didn't have 40, 50 people that would go to see him. And this is an important moment in the saint's life I would like to bring up. In 1974, the saint himself says that he was so flooded by the grace of God, so flooded with the love of God, that he begged Christ not to allow himself to he couldn't endure the grace and the love of God any longer. And he prayed, please, Lord, if this is to go on anymore, for sure, I would be unable to endure this. And it says at that moment, all the love that he felt from God was transformed into an unabating kind of love for other people. And there begins the story of his openness. And when we go inside the house, in the next slide, you'll be able to see where the saint actually stood during his prayer. You kind of see that recessed area in the image you see, and you see some icons that are pinned. This is actual photo inside the little church, which is inside the little home that the saint prayed. In this little chapel is where the saint gave his spiritual struggles, his vigils, his prayers. And on the wall, both behind him and to his right, if he were standing in the stall, are the saints that we know of that the saint saw while he was alive. Saint Euphemia, who we celebrated just a few days ago, Saint Arsenios of Cappadocia, who was the priest and godfather of the saint and who prophesied at the saint's baptism that he would be the savior, we could say, the person who would help save countless lives. And when I visited this hut in Panaguda just a few years ago, there are two fathers who live there now, Father Arsenios and Father Isaia. It was interesting that I asked Father Arsenios, I said, Pater, Father, tell me something that was most striking from your interaction with the saint, all the years you were close to him. And at the time I was a deacon, he said, Father, good deacon, ποτέ δεν υπολόγισε τον εαυτό του. He never ever once considered himself. He had this unbelievable amount of love that he would always care and give to the other people. He said there were days where he would sleep 2 or 3 hours, if that. He would be standing and visiting with people all day, not eating, not drinking, forgive me, not even having the opportunity to use the proper facilities. He had this unyielding love and sacrificial posture and attitude out of love, driven out of love for the people and their needs. And this is actually such a beautiful kind of image and example, because in the end of the day, it just shows that we can't say we love God without loving our neighbor. It's a law. We have to be able to love both our Lord and that love that radiates that God gives us, then we give and we share with other people. And even sometimes people who may be difficult for us to deal with. I remember a story that a metropolitan told me when he had the opportunity to stay in the hut with the saint for about 6 or 7 days. He said it was interesting. One afternoon, a pilgrim came to visit him, and the saint took him inside his home. He had a little area where they would sit. And as soon as they sat down, a bumblebee came. I had mentioned this earlier this evening to my parish council as a story to reflect upon the saint. And he said this bumblebee came, and inevitably, as the bumblebee flew around this man, he began to, swat the bumblebee away because he was scared he was going to be stung. And the saint, Paisios, turns to the man and says, "Do you know the bumblebee?" And the man was completely confounded, like, how am I supposed to know? Have you made the acquaintance? Γνωρίζετε την μέλισσα was the Greek phrase. And of course he said, no, I don't know her, Father. He goes, maybe she has 7, 8 months to live. But he says, she's very, very good. She does a lot of things for me. So now the man's like, what is he talking about? She came here because I wanted to treat you to a Turkish delight, which has the sugar. Watch, he says. And he put some sugar on his hand, and the bumblebee flew and started eating from the sugar. He says, she's a wonderful bumblebee. She helps pollinate my flowers here. She helps also with making for me honey, which I use, and also eventually the beeswax candles. But you, he said, thought of her only in one way, that she came to sting you. And then he says, okay, now you go. And the bumblebee took off and flew out of the window. And indeed, that man had gone to the saint because he had considered certain people out to sting him, out to hurt him. And the saint used this very simple image of a bumblebee and how easy it is to disregard all of the good that people can give us, all of the good that people have to offer, and use it and to see them and to interpret them only out to sting us and to hurt us. This is just one of many of the stories that the saint used. The saint also, as we know from his life, was not only clairvoyant and could see things and know things about you before you visited him and before you even spoke to him. And again, I had the great honor of meeting a very beautiful monk named Father David from Carries, He passed away much too early at the age of 49. And Father David used to always go and visit with the saint because his home in the capital of Mount Athos was a short 20-minute walk to the hut of Saint Paisios. And the saint would also appear ever so often in Carriès. Well, he says, I had some really bad thoughts. They were tormenting me, he says, Father Panteleimon, and I couldn't get these thoughts out of my head. I kept thinking I was at the school in Mount Athos. He was in charge of all the liturgical life, and he was considering maybe I have to leave. I don't know what I should do. This is becoming very tiring. He would do all the services in his own home, and then Father David would go to the school and repeat all the services a second time. And so he said, I have to go and consult with St. Paisios, Father Paisios, to see what he's going to tell me to do. So when he got to the hut of St. Paisios, he rang the bell, and of course the saint opened the door and started laughing. And Father David said, your blessing, Pater. He says, Demules, can you tell me, does the Athoniada school have a freezer? He says, of course, Father. He goes, all right, the things you're thinking, take them and put them in the freezer for a month to freeze. And this was a funny way of the saint telling him, take it easy, don't worry, we will deal with that in a month. And of course, Father David ended up staying at the school, and it was a great blessing and enrichment of his own life as he was helping to form these young men into young adults who would be connected with God. One time also in Chalkidiki, where Mount Athos is, I had met a woman. Her name was Olga, who was a rather lively woman, full of life, kind of a stand-up kind of person, ready to answer and proclaim her faith in Christ. And one afternoon she says to me, Father, I have to tell you, I fight with God. I said, okay, what do you mean by that? She says, well, my daughter, Ekaterina, at 19 years old with her fiancé, were killed in a horrible car accident one day before their marriage. Unfortunately, she said it was one of the most tragic moments in my life. And she said, I was completely distraught. I was completely lost. I could not get out of bed. I could not think straight. I could not walk straight. I could not eat. I could not sleep. Horrible, horrible tragedy. And one of my friends said to me, Olga, you live in Thessaloniki, Suroti, and I'd like to show the next frame. Suroti is this monk named Paisios, and you see the monastery in your image. This is the monastery of Suroti, as it's known. And basically, I can tell you that it's about 7 or 10 kilometers outside of Thessaloniki, and is where the saint had established a monastic community of women, and is actually buried there, as you see in the image up above. That's St. Paisios' tomb, and he had given a kind of directive, if you will, that not to have him unburied. He wanted to remain there. So Kyria Olga says, what do you mean? And her friend says, go to Suroti. They have this monk there who is a very holy man. Go and see him. She said, Father Pandeleimon, when I got to the monastery, the chain of people was all the way down the mountain. There must have been 2,000-3,000 people waiting in line. I got there at 5 p.m. and made my way slowly. Eventually, what happened? At 3 a.m. in the morning, 10 hours waiting, she gets to the room where Saint Paisios was. And when she steps in, he says, Carlos din Olga. Greetings, Olga. Now, he had never met her, of course. And she says, Father, how do you know my name? he says, "Why do you worry about Katerina? Don't you know that she's next to the throne of God?" And she said, "Father, all of those things that kind of were weighing down on my heart, all of the pills and other things that I was taking in order to somehow overcome my depression and my hurt, everything disappeared just from that simple greeting." And this, my beloved, is very indicative when we talk about saints. I think we had a show not too many weeks ago on saints and sainthood. And I think it was there that we said, the saints are not saints because of themselves. No saint does miracles. It's Christ's grace that works and operates through the saints. Our calling is to make kind of our landing pad of our soul for the grace to land. And the way we do that is through our purity. The saints are those who struggle to clean up their inner house so that God can come and dwell in them. And that's kind of the sign of a saint. You and I may have moments of grace where we may feel the grace of God. It brings us peace, whatever the case may be. But the saints become living vessels of the grace of God. And so when they see us, when we encounter the saint, there is a kind of presence, a presence that's different than when you just meet some other person. And it's that which I think is the revelation of God's grace operating still even up to today. So the saints are kind of like the dew, the honey that drips from Christ, if you will. And what makes them saints is their utter love, unconditional, for God. Even though they make mistakes, saints are not necessarily sinless, but it's the great magnitude of their love for God which leads them to repentance, which leads the grace of God, because of their humility, to abound on them and to live upon them. And I think it's important that we make this point too, that sainthood is not something for the few. It's open to all of us. It's open to us who want to struggle and give our lives for Christ. And the modern saints of our church show us that path. I think at this time I would like to go to a commercial, but before I do that, I want to say that I'm very grateful to all of you for tuning in week after week. I want to say thank you to our viewers. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, if you please like them both. It gives us certain functionalities that we're looking to get once we get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube especially. Also, I would like to let you know that I'm going to be bringing onto the show a special guest after our commercial break. As always, we have our very own Chef Panayoti. He is a very fine young man. I want to say this too. Here's a young fellow who's doing so much on the internet wave, but he's in church every Sunday. He's in church with his sister Sophia and his beautiful parents. And it's these kinds of parents who have this kind of dedication to the church, who raise these types of kids, who will always remain connected to the church. So without further ado, I would like to go to a commercial break, and when we come back, you will have an opportunity to meet our special guest. God bless.
Hello everybody, this is Chef Panayoti. Kalispera everybody. Today we are making a very healthy salad called Greek tacos. Not tacos like Taco Tuesday. It's tacos. And you could find this healthy salad on an island called Crete. Here's a picture of the island of Crete. Don't you wish you were there now? It looks so peaceful. Let's go over the ingredients that we will need for the Greek taco. Not taco, I mean taco. Some rusk, chopped tomatoes, olives, feta cheese, grape leaves. I love them. That's why I'm putting them in. Chopped onions, oregano, salt, olive oil, and water. We'll show you what we will use for the water in a little while. Now we're gonna open our bag of rust. Put this off the side. And these scissors. Now we're gonna wet our rust, so don't mind that. We're gonna dip our rust in the water quick, so when we bite into it, it's not too hard when we eat our meal, which will be delicious. Let's do one more. Right here. Now let's take tomato and put it all over our rust. Scoop and boop. Scoop-a-doop-doop. Scoop. Before I add anything else, I'll add salt on the tomatoes. Now I'm going to add olives to the platter. Now I'm going to add grape leaves that I love eating as a snack. Ooh, I have to do this. I really, really have to do this. I'm going to make a mini taco. 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 And this. Oh, feta cheese. And it's delicious. And as you all know, the ice cream truck is here. Now we're gonna add a little bit of oregano. And olive oil. Then our Greek tacos are ready. Not tacos. You thought I was done, didn't you? Nope. We have to add Greek flatbreads. One here. One in that. And the grape leaf. Oh, I heard that crunch in the bread. Here is a Greek taco. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another video. And don't forget to share this video to all your friends and like the video.
We thank our beloved Chef Panayoti, and he's always so cute and always so on point. Thank you, Panayotakimasu. Well, this evening we have a very nice guest with us, Konstantinos G. Zachariadis. Costa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I want to talk about you, but I'm not. I'm going to let you talk about you. I have to say up front that Costa has been really the power, the battery on the infrastructure of all of our broadcasts. And I thought it was fitting to end the season by bringing him onto the show. And we want to know about you, Costa, and about your love for your church and your community and the work you do here. And we thank you for that. And tell us, Costa, where were you born? Give us the snapshot here.
Well, to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous, but I figured
I don't believe it, but I see it.
if James Yarian can do it, I can do it too.
Sure.
So,
Right.
where do I start? So,
Where were you born?
I was born in New York. I grew up in Astoria, Queens. Went to St. Demetrius Cathedral, and my dad actually was a psalti there.
Oh, beautiful.
Like your dad, right?
Yes, sir.
So, I grew up, and in my house on Sunday afternoons, my dad was running off early in the morning to church, and then he had Echo Mistidia. I was like, what is all that? And he would like run off to the sacraments in the afternoons. And ironically enough, that became me during Holy Week, starting Holy Week throughout this whole pandemic. But, I came to Holy Resurrection with my family, and it's quite frankly, one of the best decisions we ever made. It's a beautiful community and a beautiful church family, and we're obviously happy to have you, Father, with us as well.
Thank you.
So
it was funny that as Konstantinos was being drafted at all the services during Holy Week, I remember him saying, now I understand what my father, every time I would ask my father, he said, Pupas, where are you going? I'm going to church. He goes, I never could understand how someone could go to church so often. And
well,
yet,
just to be honest, my wife would always get to church on time, and
right.
I would always lag a little bit behind. I was out the door early because I had to be here before Othros.
Correct.
Something that happens before the liturgy. I don't know if those that are watching realize that. I learned the hard way about Othros. And, the irony was I would get up early and get to church well before she was up, which was a pretty interesting change of a dynamic.
You bring up Orthros. It's
my
the
favorite
beginning.
Part, by the way, my favorite part. You should know that.
It is. I'm sure. Costa, take us through, though, the evolution. Let's begin in the orthro stage of these broadcasts. So, I think for our viewers, it's obvious that we didn't have any concept or any kind of foresight into this kind of.
We didn't, to be honest.
I think none of the churches, none of our sister churches.
We had a webcam, which our parish council and our volunteers had set up, and it was a very static webcam. It would give a wide shot of the church, and the audio was okay at best, but you can also hear people like standing under the camera. So if you were mumbling, anybody in church, it would pick it up. So what we did was when we realized that this was going to be a long-standing issue in terms of not being able to access the church, I think it was during Keretismi, Father.
Yeah.
You and I spoke, along with Stephanie, the president. We said, listen, we got to do something better. So we started out with literally one camera, right? We started with one little camera. It was a Sony Handycam. And we were picking up the audio off the camera. So for those of you, you can actually go on to the YouTube channel and scroll and take a look at it. The audio was pretty bad. The video was pretty bad. Right. But I just want to say that all that is really not that important if the content isn't good, right, Father?
Correct.
So I thank you, and the whole parish thanks you for being the force behind all this, because technology is great, but if the content and the message isn't great, so to speak, then what are we doing? And I think all the churches can say that in terms of their ability to give their parishioners a window into the church when the church is technically closed. So we thank you for that, Father, because visibility could be either a very good thing or a very bad thing. Right. And we had a lot of visibility throughout the entire
And I thank you, but truly, I think we had said up front, the whole team, that this is about, in this very unique situation our churches are faced, how do we continue to bring the message of Christ to the people? Correct. In the reality of a separation. So by God's grace, everything, and as I've said many times, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. And so it took a very, very, very determined team of people to really try to continue to make our church and everything we do here at Holy Resurrection touch the lives of everyone.
So just to go back to the evolution, we started with one camera, like we said. We went on to 2 cameras, then we worked on the audio. A lot of time with Themi testing the microphone system in the middle of the night, right. which was a lot of fun. And it ended up evolving to what it is today, where we have multiple cameras, we have switching devices, and we have a lot of help. Our friend Dimitri has been tremendously helpful in guiding us and giving us good advice and yelling at us when we're not doing things correctly, because there's a lot that goes on behind the camera. And I got to be honest with you, it's a lot easier behind the camera than on this side of the camera, okay? So let me just make that statement very
I feel
clear.
the same way. I feel the same way.
But you know what? At the end of the day, seeing and hearing the parishioners, you know, thank us. And by the way, we see all the messages live during the streaming events. So you'll see all the feedback, you know, all the positive feedback, and we'll talk about some of the not so positive feedback as well.
Tell us about that.
Well,
I mean, Holy Week had some moments that were very.
Holy Week was very interesting. I think it was Thursday, Holy Thursday.
I think it was Holy Thursday because I remember standing at the foot of the cross.
Correct. So, you know, there we are in the church. I think it was just a handful, Yanni, yourself, me. Stephanie was, of course, manning the e-commerce station, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, which, you know, the viewers may not know. But be that as it may, we're sitting in church, and Father is giving a beautiful liturgy, and I'm watching the comments, right? And the comments come in as two types, a YouTube comment or a Facebook comment. And the Facebook comments are pretty benign, right? They're natural and they're complimentary. And then the YouTube comments start taking a pretty dark turn. First, you see some writing, which is, you know, Middle Eastern handwriting, and I can't, you know, read it, so I don't know what they're saying. And then it gets into just flat out trolls, you know, mocking the liturgy, mocking us, mocking you. You know, do you believe this stuff? 4-letter words, all these horrible statements. And it's just literally me with the monitor looking at it, and you have no idea because you can't read it from there. And I was getting very frustrated, to be honest. Church ends, right? We go offline, breathe a sigh of relief. I said, Father, come take a look at this. So Father and I read it, and we're like, and I'll let you say what you said to me.
Yeah, I remember that. Thank you for bringing that up, Costa. I remember Costa was literally, you were in tears, Costa, from how sad you were and how angry. And I said to him, Costa, this is a continuation of the humiliation of our Lord. The trolling, the profanity was exactly aligned with what our Lord suffered on Holy Thursday. The spitting, the beatings, the mocking, the slapping. It was exactly the same. And later that evening, it was just words. And we had no way of identifying who they were, where they were from, tipota, nothing. And then that night, we did something, and here I have to say thank you to Father Stavros Akrotirianakis. I will give him a shout out. He has done a similar thing in his community, live in the church. The conditions were such that we had to figure out a way to hold an all-night vigil with reading of the Psalms at the foot of the cross.
I think that was, and I can speak for my family, my kids, my wife, and me personally, that was one of the most touching moments I've ever had at being a part of the church. Because for those of you who may not know what we did,
take them through,
sure,
because
we had the cross, obviously, and then we set up a Zoom session, a live Zoom session all night. And the Zoom session was basically an opportunity for people to dial, and Father had set up a sign-up genie, where people actually reserved times to read Psalms. And they reserved the Psalm readings for the certain times, right? So your name was associated with a certain time slot. And then you logged into the Zoom session, right? It was a Zoom session, if I recall.
Correct.
And you read the Psalm, and then you logged off, and then somebody else logged on. And all that was backfed into the broadcast live. So anybody at any time could log on to the YouTube channel and witness the Psalm reading real time throughout the night. But the YouTube channel only runs for 8 hours. So after 8 hours, the system had to we had to kill the feed and restart the feed. So I remember Father said, "You're going to make it in the morning." I said, "No problem." So I think I came out at 5 in the morning, whatever it was, to restart the feed and get to the next session of Psalm reading. And to hear our kids and our youth reading at 3, 4, 5 in the
And
morning.
people from across
People
the
from
country
across the country were logging
and outside of the country, Costa.
It was really bringing it home.
It was really special.
And the irony was, at a time where the church's doors were closed, the access and the involvement was more than it's ever been. Because realistically, you can't do that in the church when it's filled.
And the imagery, if you recall, Costa, too, of Christ alone at the cross.
Yeah,
And
it was special.
he was alone again. I mean, that was something that stuck in my head as well. And also the fact that you had kind of this, for all of the hours that in between all of the services, the royal hours, for all the hours until Christ comes down from the cross at Apokathilosis, there were psalms being read continuously. And it was a very beautiful and very touching.
And I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, I think we're going to do that as part of our Holy Week kind of special. 3 o'clock readers, 2:30 a.m. readers, 4 a.m. readers, and then it was really special. And then, Costa, there are the dynamics, the reality of, I mean, before we get to how this show came into existence, perhaps you'd like to comment on the ability for people who were requesting, well, can't we light a candle? Can't we? Every year I light a candle. Every year I go to Holy Week and I put my candle down at the foot of the cross. I put it at the icons.
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit that whole dilemma.
We have a friend, Harish. His last name escapes me.
Prasanna. He's
Harish Prasanna.
Not Orthodox and not Greek.
He's a great fellow, but Harish was very instrumental in working with Stephanie, our president, in developing our entire e-commerce portal. So the Square site that you had the opportunity to log on to and make a donation or light a candle or whatever it may be, that was developed pretty much with a gun to our head, right? Because we had no time, when you think about it. There was no testing. There was no beta testing. It had to get done because the parish made it clear that they wanted an opportunity to participate, knowing that you're not going to be able to come to church.
Right.
And this is the reality. But we also didn't want to have it so distant, so to speak. So what we did was we decided, what I think was a great idea, to put the sand candles, the sand trays up front. So whenever somebody went online, and you may not know this, to light a candle, somebody was literally monitoring that transaction feed real time. That transaction feed was then texted to a parish council member, and we made a conscious effort to rotate so every parish council member could spend some time and be involved in this, because it was important that the parish council stay involved, and we have, obviously, and through the meetings and everything else, but in the liturgy itself, clearly. So that candle, when that was lit real time, that was lit as a direct response to a donation or a gift that was made. And people acknowledged that. They saw, hey, I just bought 2 candles, and they actually lit them for me, and they're there. And it's, it was a way, and you've heard me say it many times before, it was a way for people to feel like they're being, they're contributing and they're involved in the liturgy as well. So that site, the e-commerce site, and all those transactions, all that was made possible through the work of, a select few individuals that worked really, really hard, along with our treasurer and our assistant treasurer, Kyriako and Ann, working really hard to build this whole system up. And I quite frankly think it's not going to go away, because we have parishioners that may never set foot in this church.
Correct.
And that's pretty cool. I mean, we see Tina Lowe. I see Tina Lowe always pop on. We see a number of different...
Lisa Ray from Canada somewhere.
We have people joining from Greece. And the reality is, they're enjoying the liturgy. And quite frankly, we got an email, I believe, from one of the, members, distant members, I should say, asking us, are you going to stop the broadcast once the church is opened? And I think we have an obligation to not. I think we have an obligation to do a good job for the people that can't get here, for one reason or another. Obviously, the best case is to be in the church.
Right.
But you know what, Father? I think it's a great platform, and I'm just proud to be a part of it and to help.
There is, I want to comment quickly on 2 things, Costa. The personal touch aspect, as many of you saw in the previous weeks, we had home visits at the height of the coronavirus, at the height when everyone was basically locked in. And we kind of felt like, our people needed to have a touch point, a real kind of. And so we visited a number of our parishes. We were able to bring that onto the broadcast.
Yeah, if you look at episode 1 and 2, it's like a publisher's clearinghouse, but Father doesn't have a check. And we actually went and visited a few homes, and that was at the height, if you remember.
Of course.
We kept our distance, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful way to connect.
And then we circled in now as we began in phases to reopen, Costa. Maybe you want to comment to that. We have indicative, was just this past Sunday's broadcast, my beloved friends. There was no Costa. And it was purely operated and run by our Goyans. So I think that's a telling kind of point, and this is because of Archbishop Elpidoforos, I have to say, because he would always tease me, says, the young people, they know these devices and these broadcasts better than we do, and he's right.
Well, here's something you may not know. When I was a kid in St. Demetrius, Bishop Alexios asked me one Holy Week to video and document the liturgy, every liturgy.
And how old were you?
I must have been 13, right? So 14 maybe. So me and Teddy Carunos, right? We were in the balcony at St. Demetrius videoing, and they're all on VHS tapes. And I actually have some of them with my dad chanting. It's really beautiful. But I think it's important that the younger generation, and by the way, it's something that they resonate with, the technology, their ability. I mean, they run circles around us. So for them to be able to stay involved and to get involved with this type of ministry, which directly touches them, right? When you talk about hits, when you talk about views, when you talk about sharing, when you talk about, building the channel and building the forum and the platform by which we can better give a message. Well, at the end of the day, guys like us are dinosaurs, right? When you think about that. And the youth is really who should be doing this. And they are. They have been when they're not on their phones, reading their phones. But the reality is it's been refreshing to know, because truth be told, it's a lot of pressure. You know it because you're here every Sunday, right? But, to know that you have to be here on time and you have to get the liturgy up and running. And the internet connection can't go down, which it has, by the way. And which I'm reminded of every time during the liturgy, all text messages. But anyway, so that's really great that the youth has joined in.
Right, and it would be a most worthy thing to bring all of these young adults really to the stage, because we have a number of not only male young adults, but also female young adults, and there's a lot of beautiful, beautiful connection. It's what we say, to connect people where they're at. The church can become sometimes distant from our youth, or maybe the youth don't find it as attractive or as appealing, but we find ways to connect them, Costa. Just like we say, not everyone's going to be a priest, not everyone's going to be a gardener, not everyone's going to be a chanter. Well, there are ways which our youth are able to offer their God-given talents back to their church in order to enhance. Again, I'm going to stay on that, Costa. The fact that the whole point of all of these productions was to share the message of Christ. And so I know many of you are post-evening thanks. It's not about thank you. I mean, I feel, and I'm sure I speak for Costa, we did what we had to do in order to, that's it. And as the Lord says, even when you do everything you're supposed to do, how can you boast? You only did what you were supposed to do. So there's no feeling of kind of, oh, we did something, because
and we helped, I think maybe 4 or 5 other neighboring churches in setting up their systems as well, which I think is great.
Right, and that was kind of the feeling we all had. That's the point. We're all here to help.
But let's talk about the show, Father. Let's talk about how it started.
I was very much against it. Now he's changing roles on me. He's not supposed to do that. Yes, the first show here was, I don't even remember what I spoke about. Nonetheless, I was very apprehensive and did not feel that comfortable at all.
The night before, you sent me a text, I don't know if we're ready for this.
Right, I did not feel we were ready, and I did not feel like this is the best thing to do. But again, necessity pushes you to places where you sometimes don't want to go. I truly enjoy having guests on the show. We had Father Elias some weeks ago. We had Father Aristide telling us about icons.
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot more of, I kind of, if I can say this publicly, consider this show kind of like an adult Sunday school. And that's not meant to be meant as a derogatory thing, but to try to give our adults education about the church, what we believe, why do we believe it, how does the church function, and why does the church do this, and why does the church do that? What does liturgy mean? What is baptism? So we will go through a series of things in the coming months by God's grace about talking about sacraments, bringing other people who are much more versed in certain areas than I am. Bible, where did the Bible come from? What are these patristic writings? Who are the fathers? Why do we have this liturgy and not that liturgy? And all those interesting things that, as I've said many times, Costa, you heard me, when you don't know something, you cannot love it.
Correct.
You have to know something in order to love it. People oftentimes, especially our young kids, reject the faith. They don't even know what the faith is to reject, if you think about it, right? So when they begin to learn and to know, that's when things change.
It's not just the young kids, it's us.
It's us too, for sure, for sure.
So can I share a little story about the first show?
Please.
So there's a major build-up. I share, I try to get as many people as possible to log on. I'm like, it's going to be a show tonight, 7:30. We get here, we're setting up the lights.
Oh, yes,
The lights
I
were
remember.
whatever.
I
So
do
we're ready
remember.
to log on, 7:30. I clicked log on, and it's not working. And I'm like, what's going on? The Facebook page won't post. I click again, it's not working. I said, Father, what's going on? Internet's working, everything's up. I'm like, I don't understand why Facebook isn't working. So it turns out YouTube is able to, log on to YouTube. We can stream to YouTube. So I said, listen, forget about Facebook. We can't wait. It's like 7:38 now. I'm getting text messages from my wife, my brother-in-law, Stephanie. Where are you guys? What's going on? Why hasn't the show started?
Right.
And the sweat is beating down my head. And Father, I love you. It's very difficult to get upset with you. I say that on live TV. The show ends, right? We go offline. I'm like, I can't believe this. I don't know what happened. And Father, in his loving voice, says to me, Costa, this afternoon, I figured it's a good time to maybe change some of the passwords on Facebook. I'm like, what? What did you do? He goes, yeah, I changed the admin password. I'm like, why would you change the admin password the day before, the day we go live? So ever since then, we started this show with, I walk into the church, Father said, Costa, I didn't change any password.
That's right.
We're good for tonight. So we learned, and I'm glad. I thank everybody, for their patience, because it's not perfect, and we're trying to do the best we can. And I think
With
I think it's
zero
fun.
budget.
With zero budget.
Right.
Correct.
There was nothing in our budget, my beloved, that ever spoke to creating a program like this. And so, we're not professionals here, although we have some excellent guides who are professionals. We ourselves are not professionals. And I mean, the idea that all of this has been done, as I said last time, we have some good people out there who are watching, who want to help support this ministry. We do consider this to be a ministry, a teaching ministry of the church. And if you're interested and would like to help support this ministry, I take the liberty to humbly ask you to contact us one way or another. Contact me, you can private message me or whatever the case may be on Facebook or the church, and we would be most grateful to anything anyone wishes to do for this broadcast and for the infrastructure that we're trying to build. As I said, it is coronavirus time. Our churches did have all of us struggle. But Costa, because you're also involved very much in the expansion project,
Sure.
and I'm just curious to kind of get your feel on that, because we have this, but the life of the church continues.
Yeah, the work of the church.
The work of the church continues. We see it in our sister churches. They're moving forward, in our bishops, our archbishop. Life goes on with whatever way we can. So is there anything you would like to say before?
So leading up into the pandemic, all the equipment that we used for the broadcast, we would have a presentation streaming outside in the narthex about the status of our expansion project, which, as you know, Father, and for those listening at home, includes a classroom expansion, a fellowship hall expansion, and the addition of a gymnasium, right? So these are pretty lofty goals. And throughout this, diastema, this period of, COVID, we've kept moving forward with our design development, with our drawing preparation,
Correct.
and actually, right before COVID hit, if you remember, I think it was in February, we had our zoning board meeting
Exactly.
with the village, and we just received our zoning board approval, which is a pretty big step. in terms of getting approval from the village to be able to, Village of Brookville, to be able to do this work. And that is the first step. So I'm proud to say we received that. The design professionals have all worked diligently, you know, a lot of them working remotely from home and coordinating the structural, the architectural, the engineering packages. Our construction committee and our finance committee, you know, with Jimmy Santos, who is from Astoria as well, and is Nasirian, I might add. But Jimmy, Sam, Cliff, I don't want to forget anybody's name, Jim Zaccaria, you know, they've all, Steve Fagos, they've all logged on weekly whenever we've had our coordination meetings, and I apologize if I omitted anybody from those meetings, and all that has been going on and has continued. So here we are today with pretty much our 100% CD package, construction document package. It's being placed right now for bid between GC Trades, and the work of the church continues. And why we're doing all this? We're not doing this so that we can build NBA players. As much as my son, you know, would like to, you know, get better, and athletics is important, and it should be. But at the same time, we're building and we're doing all this so that the youth is closer to the church.
Correct.
Okay, if you can get them in through this door, this door, this door, this door, it doesn't matter as long as they end up here, right? So I'm proud of the effort. I'm proud of, you know, where we've come and how far we've come. And you know, the irony is you're never ready for something like this.
Right.
You know, if you wait till you're ready, you'll never get it done, right? So you got to bite the bullet and you got to move ahead. And it's going to be a little bit more challenging now with what we're dealing with, but that's just going to make it that much better.
Right. I think it's, you know, the church, I know that probably many of our churches there in the stratosphere, as I say, they carried on. Our Greek school was doing virtual learning
Correct.
Throughout that whole time. We were doing our Goya meetings virtually. We were doing our FOS, our young professionals group, the parish council meetings. So again, we share all this so that we can first give glory to God for the means that He gave us to stay connected, and again to emphasize the great importance of, and remember, I think I may have said that, Kostas, at some point, all of this so the family stays together. We didn't want to feel separated from one another. I think we have some time to receive some questions for this evening's broadcast. I do want to say that we will take a break for the next couple of weeks, and we will be back on with a whole new season beginning on September 7th.
So Costa, you have to kindly expand the question page because I can't do it from here.
We have one of our younger
Go down,
people
right there. Click that.
in the back. Somebody writes here, again, thank you, Costa, for your time on the show.
Is this my cue to get off?
No, you can stay, you can stay. We're going to take a few questions here because of the time. I think it deserves, Costa, maybe at some point in the future we do a full session, maybe just on the ministries of our church, our Goya, our Joy, showing that the life and the way we help form the lives of our young adults, this is very important. And I think it's important for our faithful to see. And anyone watching who has great ideas and have seen, have things to say, by all means, you can submit those as well. So somebody wrote, speak about St. Paisios and Hagia Sophia. I'm really not sure what the question is asking, but there are many things that have been said. Some people say prophecies, some people say different things. I don't know firsthand from these things, so I won't comment, but there are in the stratosphere people who say that the saint made prophecies and that he spoke of somehow Hagia Sophia being turned into a mosque, which is something that has caused great pain and deep hurt to the entire world and to people of all goodwill and quite frankly of all faiths. I don't hide that this was a completely, I think, wrong decision to make it into a mosque. I think that what Saint Sophia, Hagia Sophia stands for the Christian world especially, and for our ecumenical patriarchate, it's definitely a provocation, which I don't think was very wise. And we as a community will be in the coming days, under the guidance of our archdiocese, mobilizing whatever we can in order to help the situation with this unfortunate decision. I don't, Costandine, if you can increase the
Costa
size of
Yarian,
that
you
box.
have to expand that window, please. We can't see it.
But I did see a question
There
from
you go.
Calliope. Calliope is our 10-year-old. She had asked a fantastic question, Costa, some time ago. And she says, do you think that St. Paisios was pure throughout his childhood and the rest of his life? Or do you think he sinned like all people do, especially when you are a kid? I think that, Calliope, that's a very good question again. As I mentioned to you the last time you asked the question, I would like for you to come onto the show because you are clearly a very smart young lady and a young lady who cares about her faith and about her life by just the question you ask. I think St. Paisios was human like all of us, and like all of us, Calliope had his own weaknesses and his own struggles. But I do think that he was somebody, from all the books that I read about him and all the people who knew about him, he was someone who really, as Father Arsenios, the priest, said, never took himself into consideration first. From a young age, seeing the example of his mother who worked tirelessly, continuously, I think the saint was given very strong examples of putting not his own will first, but the will of others. And when we do that out of love for God, I think God automatically starts washing up a lot of the things that can stick on our souls. So I think definitely he didn't have an easy life as a child, but I think that through the good disposition of his heart, Calliope, the good will that he had, and his love for God, that's the way it works. The more we give of ourselves to God, the more God gives to us. And the sooner we begin that, Calliope, the better off we will be in life. So I'm sure that he sinned. All of us sin. Even Christ said no one is without sin. But I do think that his struggle God saw and that God blessed it very much. We have, unfortunately, Costandine, regrettably, reached the end of our last episode here tonight. I want to thank all of you who tuned in and asked questions, and all of those who have asked questions. We have been looking at that with our team here. Some of your questions were not answered. Over the next couple of weeks, I hope to look at those questions and will write to you individually as best as I can, as time permits, to answer some of those questions for you.
And Father, thank you for making this a priority and giving the time that you have given away from your family.
Thank you, Costa.
to-
We
to-
do, like
to
I said,
prepare.
we're all
Well,
doing
I gotta get it
out of love.
To prepare in advance, right? To think about it. I mean, I get text messages at 2 a.m, as streams of thought come through, and to really make it as special as it can be, as best as it can be. And I think I speak on behalf of the entire community when I say we're really grateful that you've given it your all. And I think we've done something pretty cool.
With God's help and for God's glory. But like I said at the beginning, it is a team. I think Stephanie Clark, who's been on the back end of so many of these productions, handling the questions, as you said, the e-commerce. I thank my young adults tremendously. I thank Dimitrios Amberiadis, who's been our really unbelievable assistant in-house here. Thank you, Costa. I thank your wife for sharing you out all those hours.
And Pablo, too. We may hear his voice one day.
Right.
Some people think he doesn't have a voice.
Right.
Pablo,
Yeah,
so
I have to have him.
your assistant.
Exactly. I also want to say that before we leave, again, just thank you to all of our viewers and all of our people out there. May the good Lord continue to bless and deepen your lives in Him and your love for Him. Just because we go off air doesn't mean we forget God. Just because we go on vacation doesn't mean we forget where we are and who we are. I pray that God keeps you all under His grace, all under His blessings. May you be in good health. May your family and your children be in good health. And may the good Lord always and forever keep us under His grace. May the good Lord always and forever keep us under his grace. May God be with us forever.
Christus